Okay, so our son um, went to a party to celebrate somebody's birthday, and he was shot to death. And I had just talked to him. This happened on a Sunday morning. I had just talked to him Saturday afternoon, and we're talking about how proud I was of him and how he was amazing, and he was planning to get married and buy a house, um, and then I got a call that he was gone. And so when I got the call that he was gone, my first response was, "Gone where?" Like, I just talked to him. What do you mean he's gone? Gone where? Um, and um, he was dead. He was gone. Um, so wasn't expecting that. Um, and so dropped to the floor. As I fell to the floor and my husband picked me up off the floor, I said, and God is still sovereign, and I'm still going to serve him all the days of my life. So our family got me packed because I couldn't get it together. Family came by and got packed. We were trying to get a flight, couldn't get a flight, so Scott ended up driving us to New Jersey, and had a week where we had to plan his homegoing celebration, planning that with family, and then coming back home. Um, so,
The thing that got me most was the party. He wasn't supposed to be there. He originally was staying home because he was going to work the next day.
mm-hmm,
And the reason why he was at the party was to go get a friend who had, I guess, drank too much and was like, before I crash or try to drive, can you come get me? So he left his house to go help a friend, which
mm-hmm,
was typical of James, of always helping others. So this
mm-hmm,
all happened at a party he wasn't supposed to be at,
mm-hmm,
where he should have been in his bed, but he left his house to help somebody else.
mm-hmm,
And this is what happened.
mm-hmm,
So it was tough.
mm-hmm,
Still is tough.
mm-hmm. And he was doing what we raised him to do, right? We raise our children to love others and to give of ourselves and to be concerned about our neighbor, and we are our brother's keeper. And so our son died being his brother's keeper, being a friend's keeper. And so um, it's still hard. It's still hard. We're just at a year, like literally just at a year. And so it's still hard. Um, people tell you that you will establish a new normal. Some of the things that people say, it's interesting. And we're still working on that. Um, but the same thing that I said the morning that we got the news still rings very true for me. And God is still sovereign, and I'm still going to serve him all the days of my life. That's not going to change. Um, is it unexpected? Yes. Is it difficult? Yes. And God is still sovereign, and we're still going to serve him all the days of our life.
The thing for me that I just keep reminding myself of, God gives us the test and then gives us the lesson after the test. So when this all happened, my prayer was clarity and understanding. I wanted to make sure that I learned why God was giving us this test and make sure I understood why. Because if you don't learn from the test God gives you, God will give you another test. And since we have two more boys, this is not a test that I want to retake. So my goal was get clarity, get understanding, get the lesson, and move on. And I believe God sustains us through all of this because by sustaining us, it allows us to sustain and help others.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe God puts on you things that you can't handle or can't deal with. So I constantly am looking for the why. Why did he task us with this? There's got to be a reason for it. And I'm constantly looking for that reason in every day and everything I do.
Do you ever feel like this is more than you can handle?
Initially, when it happened, I think we all have days, if we're honest, where it feels like more than we can handle. Um, and in those days when it was more than we could handle, God would always send an angel. So as we were planning his funeral, there were cousins and family that I could just reach out to via text and say, y'all, I need you to pray. Your sister's going through right now, or I'm feeling weak in my faith. I need you to pray. And immediately those women began to pray. And so my sisters, my cousins, um, people from my old church in New Jersey, it was amazing to receive that kind of love, just to know women who all you had to do was send a text that said, I need y'all to pray. Service is about to start. I need you to pray for my strength. To be able, it was amazing. And so one of the things that I would say to parents going through this is don't expect every day to be good. Days are not going to be the same, but that God has surrounded you with people who absolutely love you. Teach them how to love you so that they can be supportive of you. Oftentimes in death, we don't want to tell people what we need or want, which I don't understand because we tell people what we need or want any other time. But when we experience a tragedy, we don't tell people how to love us. I think it's important that you do that because all the people around you, all they want to do is support you in this. And they can't support you if you don't teach them. So for us, one of the things I taught people is don't ask me how I'm doing. Please don't do that. We're parents who lost our child. How do you think we're doing? But ask us, how is our day going? How can we come alongside you today? How can we love you today? That's a better question for somebody who's going through this kind of heartache, this kind of tragedy, because it allows them to give you something specific that you can do. So whether it's cook a meal, whether it's listen for a few minutes, I've got great friends that who always seem to text me right at the time, and they'll say, how can I love you? What's going on? And I'll say, I just need to hear your voice. And they'll call and we'll talk for a couple minutes. And it's a blessing. And so I would say, remember to allow the resources that God has put around you to be a blessing to you. But they can't be a blessing if they don't know. And even on the days when they say, how you doing today? Don't bite their head off. Just change your answer. Answer them as if they said, how can I love you today? Or answer them as if they said, what can I do for you today? Or how can I come alongside you? Because it's a difficult process because everybody doesn't tell you what they need while they're facing and going through this experience.
And I believe with pain comes growth.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we're talking physical, mental, emotional, financial.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that the pain and discomfort we got and taken out of our comfort zone, God was giving us the ability to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And some people take that pain and shy away from it, or some people accept it and grow and move forward. And when Gail said, how can I love you? What people always have to remember is how you love me today, I may need something different tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I may need something different an hour from now.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that I had to learn was to ask on a daily basis. And some days it was go to work and don't come back till 5 o'clock. Some days it was just sit here and hold me.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it is, be willing to do whatever it is that's asked, because people sometimes think they know you. And until something like this happens, sometimes you don't know you. And
Mm-hmm.
I think asking on a daily or regular basis is the way to go. And don't think because you asked the question once that that answer is what we need moving forward, because as you grow, you need different things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the conflict is, Lord, I'm doing my best to live the way that you've called me to live, and you've taken my son. Um, and God in his wonderful way reminded me, mm-hmm, and I gave my only son that you would live. And I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir, you did. Yes, sir. Um, it's also sometimes I think that parents ask ourselves the questions, what more could I have done? Our son knew Jesus. He knew the word. He knew um, how important his life was to Christ. He was loving on somebody, you know, and it was his time. And so some of the questions I think we have, we won't ever have answers to, right? Because I was expecting to, we were expecting to be at our son's wedding, and clearly that's not what God had in mind. That he had done the work, So, and there's also the other conflict of being jealous. I'm like, so dang, he got his work done, and I'm still here. Like, dang, am I on the slow bus? You know, and it just means no, you're not. It just means that we have more work to do, and that the work that God has us for us now is very different than the work that we did as parents. So yeah, there are conflicts. There are times when you're like, why mine? To a point that Scott made earlier. All these other people out here doing all the stuff that they're doing. Why mine? And it's a reminder that, first of all, he was never mine. He was simply loaned to us for a time. He always belonged to God. And so in God's sovereignty, he decided it was time for him to go home. It has nothing to do with whether or not we like it. It has to do with us understanding that God is still sovereign. It's just like our children, right? When they were kids. I don't know about you, but we didn't tell our kids yes all the time. No. No was like frequent. And so if we understand that God uses natural things to show us spiritual things, then why would we expect that God would tell us yes all the time? And so it's getting used to the small things, and finding a place and a space to be grateful. Grateful for the time that we had. Grateful for the hugs that we received. Grateful for the laughter, because he was always a jokester. He always was laughing about something. And being grateful for that time. So yeah, the answer to your question is yes. There are conflicts, but I trust the word. I go to the word of God, and I go to God for those when I have those conflicts.
I agree with Gail. There are some internal of the why me, why him, even the external as you're going through this, the people that you expect to step up for you, the people that you think I know will be there, are the ones that are no shows, and then these people that you didn't even think about, were not even on your radar, show up in full force for you. So sometimes in conflict, you get to really see who cares and who doesn't care. And sometimes the friends that we think we have, we're only associates in their eyes, and vice versa. So it did open up the people in times like this. You get to learn who you can lean on, who you can't lean on, and who's there for you and who's there just for the show.
I'm an avid reader. So in addition to the time I spend with God, because this all happened during a pandemic, so you know um, I'm an avid reader, and so I've been continue to read the Bible a lot. I thought I read the Bible a lot before. I'm really leaning in now, because that's where for me, that's where our faith grows. Is to continue to stay in the Word of God. I'm reminded of Job, who lost everything in a span of 10 hours. So the first thing is, it made me grateful for the sons that we still have who are still here, right? Um, and how God delivered Job even after that. And so, because Job remained faithful in what was the most difficult time, God honored that faithfulness, and God stood with him and blessed him even more on the other side. And so I know that I know that I know that our God is faithful, even in this. Our God is still faithful. He promised us that all things work together for the good for those who love the Lord and are called to his purpose. So clearly we are called to his purpose, and clearly he's going to work this for our good.
I will say, when you say, how did you keep your faith? It's almost you're almost saying is, I lost it. I never lost my faith. It never went away. It never disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I needed was clarity and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, how did I keep my faith? I've never lost it. Sometimes I don't understand it, and you look for understanding and clarity, but it never did I ever lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that never happened.
For um, for me, it's a series of things. It is um, the people who showed up to be a blessing during a time when we weren't talking. So they had to have been sent by God because we haven't been talking. Because people say things, as you know, that are absolutely interesting. And so our choice was to be still and know that God is God. And so for the people to show up, it was God. It continues to be God, and they continue to show up. But what's amazing is they continue to show up, and we're grateful.
I mean, for me, the thing that blew my mind was Gail's been gone from New Jersey for decades. We made a phone call telling people we were coming. We get to the hotel 11 o'clock at night, and there's a luggage dolly with soda, food, candy, crackers, chips, with a note that said, "Hope this helps you from your trip. Talk to you in the morning." With COVID, the funeral home could only hold, I think it was 19, 20 people. So how do you get 50 people into a room of 20? And who do you tell can't come? Churches open their doors to us. Um, those are the times.
Those are the times. And now the people who just randomly call, who just show up and say, hey, I know this is the anniversary. Just here to love you. That's God.
What I learned about myself is I am much stronger than I gave myself credit for. Um, and what I learned about God was, when you think you know, or you're going to tell God what your plans are, God has a good way of flipping the script to say, you may think these were your plans. Let me show you. I can show you better than I can tell you what your plans are. So it just let me know that every day is truly a blessing. You take one day at a time. Plan for the future, but also live in the moment. Just don't survive, actually live in it. Don't just try to get through it. Again, live in it. And just knowing that those of us that have faith, are much stronger than we give ourselves credit for.
I would say what I learned about myself is that I love God. I knew that I loved God before, but I really love God. And I'm grateful for that. what I learned about God is I'm experiencing God as a comforter in a way that I never have before, in a way that I probably would not have had this not happened. To listen to the word at night, to know that he's in a better place. Sometimes I imagine him walking around heaven, and every time, Jesus checks in and says, "Hey, Trey, so do you need to go back?" "No, I'm good. I'm going to go over here and see my auntie. Got to see my great grandma. I'm good. But you can ask the guy behind me." I imagine him saying, when Jesus says, "Well, but your mom and your dad, they're sad. You made them strong. They'll be okay. I'm going to go over here and talk to my pop, all right?" I don't, I imagine him, and so very grateful for that. Very grateful for those moments. Knowing God as a comforter gives us peace. It's still not easy, but it gives us peace. It is literally, sometimes it literally feels like a big blanket is being wrapped around us, and that he sustains us.
I can say, when I lost my mother, when people leave your life and die, it either brings you closer to God or takes you further away. And what I can say is, when my mom passed away, it pushed me further away from God. And when it took me away from God, I carried a weight with me. I took that, when I left God, I took that weight of my mother's death with me. And it was a weight that I carried for a long, long, long time. And it was a heavy weight. And because of my faith in God today, when this happened, it brought me even closer to God. And I knew I could leave that weight with him and he could carry it. So I definitely feel a lot freer, in the sense that I'm not carrying the weight of guilt or anything else, knowing that we did what we should have done as parents, giving him the knowledge and the tools. I always believe that we as parents have a rope, so to speak, to give to our children, to our loved ones. And our kids can use that rope to climb up and excel and do great things, or they can take that rope and turn it into a noose and hang themselves. But they can never say, "You didn't give us the rope." So I know, by being close to God and making sure that he had a relationship with God, I know I gave him the rope of integrity, understanding, faith, loving others, nurturing others, caring about others. Mm-hmm. So when God called him home, it did not hurt as bad, and any hurt or pain I felt, I could leave there with him, and it's made me freer for it. I still miss him, mm-hmm. but I don't carry that weight or that guilt around that I did before.
Mm-hmm. And it's like you have your good days and your bad days, right? There are things that you miss about your loved one. Like, I remember when I picked him up at the airport, and so now that he was 6'3" or 6'4", he could like pick me up and spin me around. I'm like, put me down. That's not going to happen anymore, right? But knowing that we did what God called us to do in terms of raising him, knowing that he's with God. And what better place could he be? He doesn't have to worry about sleep. He can literally get answers from Jesus, like, "Hey, Jesus, this right here, can you explain that?" Like he does. There is no delay now. I think what else comforted me is to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And so that it was quicker than that. And so that comforts us. Just knowing that knowing God now as a comforter in a way that I never would have before sustains us. And we know that there's work to do, right? There are so many parents who are experiencing this. And it's like every day you look on the news, you watch the news, and it seems like another young person has died. And so whereas before I was praying for their comfort, praying for their understanding, it's even deeper now because I have a better understanding because we have had this experience, right? There are things that we do sometimes that we are doing our best to be the best Christian we know how to be, but there are some things that we learn through experience. And it allows us to extend more grace and more love and more kindness than we would have if we had not had that experience.
You good? Go ahead.
So one of the things that, and one of the reasons why we did this is God sustains us so we can sustain others.
Mm-hmm.
And what parents need to understand is Gail, as my wife, that's the only person you make a covenant with to be with forever. So when your partner needs, whether it's a shrine for their child, a room for their child, to go visit the grave, whatever it is, the best thing to do is allow them to have that, allow them to do that, allow them to grieve. Because we are linked together, our relationship is only as strong as the weakest link. So if I do not let my wife grieve or feel pain or whatever it is that she needs, all I am doing is weakening our link and weakening our chain. So it's not always about what I think is best. It's always about what is best for her. Nobody knows you like you know you. And I think as a spouse, we have to remember to constantly ask, how can I love you? Because how one needs to be loved at 2 o'clock versus 12 o'clock on the same day may be totally different. There's no need for blame. There's no need to blame our spouse. We did nothing wrong. Things just happened. It was time. God called him home. He did what he was supposed to do. And so often I hear parents want to blame others, blame themselves, blame, and there is no blame. God knows what he's doing. God knows what he was doing long before we knew. God knew when he was taking him home the day before he was even born. He knew his date. So I think we always need to be mindful of that and mindful of our spouses. And it's okay for our spouses to grieve. As a man, it's okay to cry. It's okay to show emotion. It's okay to be vulnerable. Whatever it is that you need, your spouse, if you've got a good spouse, will allow you to do that and get that, because it is a process. And I think as we go through the different phases, we need different things. And again, the job is not to sit in it, but to move through it. And I believe we are constantly moving through and going through our journey. And our prayer was that with this, there will be others that we can help, we can sustain, we can strengthen, we can give them faith, we can give them hope, we can give them understanding, and maybe a little bit of clarity.
The one additional thing that I would add that I would hope that parents understand is that everybody grieves different. So the way that one person grieves in your relationship is not necessarily going to be the same way that the other person grieves in the relationship. And that's important that you give each other the space and the grace to grieve the way you do. It's okay. It doesn't mean that one person cared less, loved less. It just means that you grieve differently and that we all have to respect that, right? Because when you honor that, when you respect that, then you both are able to continue to go through this the way God intended for you to go through, not to sit in a corner all day, every day and cry. Not that that doesn't happen, but when you understand that you grieve differently, I believe that that's intentional too. I believe that that's intentional so that everybody is not doing the same thing at the same time, right? Imagine if both of you are sitting in the corner at the same time, who's feeding the kids? Who's going to work? Because those are all things that still need to be done. We don't want to talk about that, but those are all things that still need to be done. And so as we give each other the grace to grieve the way that we do, it's okay. Because God will still work it all out.
I'm happy you said that because my question was going to be, so what do you say to the parent who feels like I'm crying too long? Like,
Says
I'm
who?
not better.
Says who you're crying too long. Who says how long you should cry? What book is there that says how you should grieve? What answer? There is no answer. I think it's from within. And I think the key thing to understand is to have a faith, and also always why. You know, the question I always try to find myself in anything in life is the why. Why am I crying? Why am I grieving? Why am I happy? Whatever it may be. But there is no book, there is no answer. And even if there is a book, it's that person's answer to the question. And that person's answer and your answer are maybe different because they're not you and you're not them.
And there are a lot of resources available to help you to kind of move through your grief. I'm the kind of person that I need to be moving. I need to be doing something. And even in that, right, everybody's answer is going to be different. So in my case, it was grief share. It was also therapy. I think that in our community, it's important that I say that because we often think that therapy is for other people.
Therapy is not only for us, but some people believe therapy is a sign of weakness. What I'll say is I will actually challenge you the opposite. Therapy is a sign of strength, to be strong enough to look at yourself and know you need help and know that you can't do it, your partner can't do it, and you seek somebody else. So often the weak people are the people that sit there and just allow things to happen. And strength is when we look for change, and with change comes growth. And with growth comes a little pain, but that's all okay.
And
Now, what about those in the Christian community that say, well, we don't need therapy, we got Jesus?
I can't speak for anybody else but me. For me, I needed grief share because grief share helped me to tie my faith to what had to the tragedy, to the experience that we had. I always am going to look for a place to anchor in my faith. But therapy helped me to be able to say, you know, what else was needed. You know, the more tools you have in your toolkit. My husband usually says, the more tools that you have in your toolkit, the more versatile and flexible that you can be, and the more you have the ability to adapt and change because you have more tools. For me, it was as simply having more tools in the tool chest. There were things that you can say. There are things that you probably are not going to say in grief share in a group that you can say to your therapist in confidence. And so I would say that it was money well spent. And it's something each person has to figure out what they need. I needed all of the assistance that I could get, and I wasn't turning down any tools that I could put in this tool chest to one, help me, help us, as well as be able to help others. It's like, why would you turn down tools?
And tools build, and tools build bridges. And something I learned not too long ago was bridges give us the access to things or places we may not have had access to. So by meeting with a therapist or somebody and you get those tools, you are now giving yourself the ability to bridge or access things that you didn't have access to. Maybe things in your heart, things in your head. It's not always the literal thing, but the things going on in your head. And I believe meeting with other folks gives you those building abilities.
So, one more question.
Okay. Or not, it's okay.
But it just came to mind, actually. What would you want parents to know? Like, I know for me, there were things that I began to realize that before I had lost a child, I didn't know, right? So that people treat you different, right? Or people respond to you differently and different things like that. What is the one thing you want for parents to know in that situation? What's one thing you can share with them that you were like, I didn't realize that people did this, you know?
There are a few things. One, understand that as a parent, you have the power to say no. You don't have to answer questions because people ask. You really don't. The people who are in your inner circle already know the details. You don't have, just because some person walks up to you from Lord knows where, doesn't mean that you are obligated to answer a question. It is always okay to say, not at this time, or that is not a question I want to entertain at this time. So it's important, I would say, that parents set boundaries around themselves, around each other. What I love about 6'5", he's 6'5". Love it. Love it. And he's really wonderful about boundaries, and I appreciate that about him. And so, yeah, I would say the one thing, if one thing I would say is boundaries, to keep your faith, and to set boundaries. That it's okay and expected to set boundaries.
And I would agree, setting boundaries in the flesh or with people is important,
Mm-hmm.
but also to remember that with God, God is boundless.
Mm-hmm.
That he hasn't gone anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
he hasn't left us, he's right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of, are you willing to step closer to him?
Mm-hmm.
Every day God gets each one of us up. We have an opportunity to make right the things we made wrong yesterday. And if we had a great day yesterday, we're able to continue on that streak. So I think not only do we have to set boundaries in the flesh, but remember God's love for us and our faith for him should be boundless, and to reach out for that and to look for that. And I think too often we try to put our faith in the flesh, and that's not where it needs to be, because again, that's the flesh, which is full of all kind of stuff.
Thank you.
I think that for us, um, God is faithful. And so if you start from a place where God is sovereign and he's faithful no matter what, then whatever we're going through, I'm a big proponent of the word. I often look to the word to see how does my situation line up with the word. I think about Job and the fact that he lost everything in 10 hours. Everything, all 10 children. In 10, Lord, I'm just thankful that there are still two here. I think about Naomi, who buried her husband and both her sons, and she wanted her daughter-in-laws to just go back to their parents. That it was done for her. But Ruth said, "Oh no, I'm going to go where you go, and your God is my God." And so understanding that God is still God. He has not changed. We may not like the circumstances, we may not understand, but in his faithfulness, it is an opportunity for us to understand that he is showing us him in an even better way. Before I knew God as a healer, and I've known him as a provider, to know God as a comforter, to know that he will never leave me or forsake me. So when I read that now, I read it from a different perspective, um, knowing that, you know, we are joined together forever. So, yes, this is covenant, and we have to do the things that we need to do to allow each other to grieve, but also to love on each other as much as we can, because that's our job, that's our commission. We're not going anywhere. So, we might as well do the things we need to do so that it will work for both of us. Um, it is nothing we ever expected. If somebody had told us that on January 23rd it was going to be the last time that we were going to speak to our son, I'm thankful that we had that opportunity. I'm thankful So I would say to parents, love on your children, because we assume that we won't bury our children. That's not in the word. The word doesn't say that. And so I would say love on your children. Fix those things that you can fix in terms of your communication, because you never know. You don't want to be in a place where something happens to your child and you never got an opportunity to apologize, or you never got an opportunity to tell them that you love them. Um, the word talks about not letting the sun set on anger. That to the best of your ability as a parent, to make sure that you've done those things that you can do to let your children know that you love them. We assume that our children will bury us. That's an assumption from our flesh. That's not in the word.
I will say, when it comes to the word, God gives us things that we are weak in. I'm weak in the word. Yes, I have faith. Yes, I believe. My wife is far better at the word. So I try to break it down to a way that the average person can understand. And the best way I can put it, and it's on my license plate: gratitude changes attitude. Thank you, God. And so often we want to say, God, you gave me 100, but I wish you would have gave me 105. God, you gave me a 5-bedroom house, but I really wish you gave me a 6. And so often we spend time not being thankful for the things that we did. So for me, when Trey left, it was more of thank you for the time we had. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for the 2 grandkids you left us. Thank you for your way to make situations easier. And I think if we went through life with an attitude of gratitude, I think people's viewpoints on most anything in life will change. But we don't usually, we always want to focus on the negative and not the positive. And this is something that when bad things happen, you have to learn to focus on the positive, because that negative can send you down into a hole that you can't get out of, and that's not a good place to be. So I'm always trying to find the good in whatever it is. So I would challenge all parents: gratitude change every day. Wake up and write down one thing that you're thankful for. The air you breathe, being of the right mind, being of physical body. Even when I get up and my back hurts, thank you, God. There are people paralyzed and can't get up. So often we don't appreciate even the bad things, even the pains, even the, minute things. Gratitude changes attitude. Once you learn that, I believe it changes. What brought me to that saying is when I met Gale. I'll tell the story kind of off of this. When I met Gale, I was the guy that walked around and said, oh, you see these floors? Yeah, I built those floors. You see that car? I bought that car. It was always me and my. And I remember one time Gail said to me, she said, Scott, you do know there's something greater than you. And I looked at her with this inquisitive puzzle. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you do know that there's something greater than you. And I said, what are you talking about, God? She's like, yeah, you do understand God has given you all the talents and all the tools to accomplish and build all that you have built. I'm like, yeah, so what's your point? She said, imagine the boys, as good of a dad as you are, if your boys never said thank you. What would you do? I would say that they were ungrateful and I wouldn't do anything for them. And she said, and here it is, God has blessed you with all these tools and talents, and yet not once have you thanked him, and he continues to bless you. Imagine if you said thank you. When people tell me things, I don't always listen, but I heard it that day. And when the gratitude started, the blessings flowed. So I'm always grateful, even in loss. So, sorry. So yeah, gratitude.
And in gratitude, find something that your kids did well that day. Everybody does something amazing every day. Find that and let your children know that you love them, that you are there for them, that they got something right, and that even when they get it wrong, just like God loves us, let them know that you love them. We take a lot for granted. We take a lot for granted. And when we do that, we miss the blessing. I would also say that look at the blessings that have surrounded you in the tragedy, because God managed to continue to send blessings your way in the midst of the tragedy. Allow yourself to see them and to be grateful for them.
Her.
I'm waiting on the next one. I was like,
if I gotta cry, man, don't be too weak to cry.
I was like, I'm
That's
going.
what that
I said,
means.
okay. What Gail just said, I got to put that before what he said. Because when he said that at the end about being grateful, I was like, they need to sit. But then I was like, Gail came back with, if your kids is, I was like, well, doggone it.
Mm-hmm. I do my best to let our men, because they are no longer boys, know that we love them. I'll send a note, I'll text, because young people don't want to talk to you. All they want to do is text. But to let them know, that they're loved, that they matter, because they do.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
And the big
Yeah.
thing teaching the boys is something that I've always tried to do for myself is if you want to be successful in this life, there's three things that you need to learn how to master. A, your emotions. Nobody makes you happy. Nobody makes you sad. You are in control of how you feel. Two, your attitude, how you treat others. Regardless of how people or how life treats you, you are always in control of how you treat others and how you treat life. And three, effort. How much effort you do or don't put into something. And I will say 95% of the people out there in jail or who have done things, it's because for a split second they lost control of their emotions, their attitude, or their effort. So I'm always constantly trying to reassert that into my boys when I hear the anger, when I hear the frustration, when I hear the attitude, to remind them that they are in control of that. Nobody else but them. And I think that's something that we need to do a better job in instilling in our people and in our kids. And that's something we don't, and an understanding of gratitude. Because with that emotion, the good emotion or the bad emotion, to be grateful for that, to be grateful that you can feel it. To appreciate sunny days, you've had to see the rain. To appreciate a car or a house or a home, you may have had to been carless or homeless to appreciate those things. And so often they take things for granted. And it's just constantly reminding our children and our loved ones and the people close enough to us that not to take these things, just always gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. If you are grateful, more people are more apt to do things. Gail always reminds me, thankful. Say thank you. You say thank you because whoever did something for you did not have to do it, and they did not have to do it for you. So at the very least, say thank you and have a sense of gratitude. But so often we've become a society that believes we should just get. We're entitled. And we're not entitled to anything. Everything we have is because of God's grace and mercy, and it's not an entitlement. And I think if we would learn that, we would all be a lot better off for it. All right, I'm off the soapbox.
Y'all sure?
Yeah.
Wrap it then.